First episode of 2026. Let's go.
Yeah. Welcome. Alex, so excited for this, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to this one since I first met you a few months ago. And yeah, I was thinking what would be the best way to start. But I think the question that's really top of mind for me and that we actually have never discussed in the past is, when you look at the prototyping space, you see people like Lovable, Volt, V0, even Figma make, everyone's adding these backend agents. But I feel like Magic Patterns is basically probably the one that is not doing that. So kind of when I see that, my first question is like, what does Alex know that the other products or companies don't know?
Yeah, the short answer is product quality. We just believe that if we focus on front end only, it leads to the best product for prototyping, helping you visually communicate. The second, longer answer is it's in our DNA. We were one of the first AI prototyping tools, and we've always been very focused on front end.
Yeah, maybe just to so people know the distinction between front end and back end, kind of what's happening under the hood for all these other tools and what's maybe different of what you guys are doing.
Totally. So with all of these tools, right, you submit a prompt and then it builds code in the background. And basically, that AI agent that's deciding what code to write has to determine, okay, should this be front end code, meaning it's just code that runs in the browser, it's just mainly for visualizing it? Or is it back end logic, right? Like, do I need to spin up a database? Do I need a server? And so, our AI agent, there's no logic in there that's like, hey, spend some time thinking about if you need a database or you need a server. There's nothing in there. We are entirely focused on the visual output.
Makes
Does
sense.
that mean that you find yourself resonating more strongly with any of the people that are currently experimenting with these different vibe coding or kind of like AI powered prototyping tools? Like, there's basically audiences that you're actively turning down as you're not our people, but then the people that are your people are really, who are those people that are really resonating with this philosophy?
So, well, product teams really resonate with it because it's often at large companies on these product teams, they don't have a database endpoint that they can actually use production data with the prototyping tool, right? Or with one of these vibe coding tools. It's like a security IT nightmare. And then secondly, we see lots of people interestingly, there's so many use cases that can be solved without a database. Like very common in our support chat, someone might say, hey, well, I want to hook it up to real data. And we'll say, well, could you just paste that into the prompt? Or, hey, could you hook it up to a Google Sheet? Like you can hook it up to a Google Sheet. And that solves their problem. And so that's been really interesting is I think we've really pushed the bounds of, hey, in this little vibe coded prototype visual mockup, how badly do you really need the complications of a server and a backend?
Are,
Yeah,
are
well,
you finding there to be any most the happy path of using a product that is designed to be only focused on the front end with no back end is the happy path of where people end up going, converging into bringing things into Figma, or is it just the prototype is the whole point, and once they get the feedback on the prototype, it's quote unquote done and completed, and that's the end of the happy path? Where are you seeing people go with it?
Totally. I mean, one thing that I'm very proud of is that we don't lock people in, right? We have lots of export options. Indeed, we're one of the only tools that has export to Figma. I'm not really sure why the other tools don't add it, but yes, you can export a Magic Patterns design to Figma. You can export it to code, sync with GitHub. We just released an MCP. And another advantage of only front end, right, is when you're connecting Magic Patterns to another AI tool like Cursor or Claude Code, we're just sharing the front end, right? We're not having Claude Code or Cursor to have to think about, oh, well, what backend did Magic Pattern set up? Oh, what's this mock Supabase database that they need to deal with, right? Instead, it's just here's the React code integrated into my real code base. So yeah, and again, it's part of our DNA. My co-founder and I actually started when we got into YC, we started always hovering around design tooling. We're former front-end engineers and really focused on that use case, which has completely influenced the product today.
yeah, I love what you just said that I think kind of what came to mind when you were explaining, hey, just because you can build an app on a backend, that doesn't mean that you should do it. It's almost like, hey, like kind of like the equivalent of like, do we really need to have this meeting? Could this be an email? And that's basically kind of like what you're saying here. Like, hey, like, could you just hook it up to a spreadsheet and you basically get like 99% of the way there without less complexity or more simplicity, which I really like that. Talking about where those magic patterns fit into a product process feels like a very interesting discussion. But before we do that, because I know we'll probably get deep into screen sharing, is I really admire people that kind of stick to their guns and their intuition and their conviction, even when it seems like everyone's going the other way around. And I think some of the best product people, product leaders that I work with kind of have that trait. Like they have that conviction. And usually that's how you win big when you're doing something different that no one else is doing or very few people are thinking about. So I'm curious, like you as a founder, right? Like I'm sure you probably, investors come up to you, advisors, like, hey, like, are you sure about this, right? Like, how do you stay like, how do you avoid wavering when you have all these people that are doing something a little bit different?
Totally, it's a great question. And to expand on Ben's question earlier, right, which is there's a whole segment of people that we are not really supporting, right? And they tend to be hobbyists. There's lots of hobbyists who are using tools like Lovable, Magic Patterns, V0, whatever it is, to build their own personal little apps. And they tend to need a database in those use cases, right? The most typical example is a to-do app. How do you actually store those to-dos and persist them? Or another one that I always see is like a personal weight tracker, like how many reps at the gym do you do, and et cetera. And Magic Patterns is not good for those use cases, right? Like we don't, unless you kind of hook it up to a Google Sheet, it's not a first-class citizen, right? Given everything that we've talked about. And so, yeah, it's been challenging where you obviously see amazing tools like Lovable, V0, et cetera, grow really, really fast because of this hobbyist use case, right? But I think one thing that's, again, just in our DNA is we've been in this space for so long that we do have the advantage of seeing which customers retain, which continue to use us. And they tend not to be the people just building a to-do app for fun, right? They tend not to be just like the hobbyists. It's like, what's the recurring use case? What is someone using Magic Patterns for every single day? Sometimes even on the weekends. It's like the product team.
And what is it? Can you give us obviously don't name anyone who can't be named or whatever, but can you give us an example of like someone who stands out to you as like one of the like a product person who's a power user of Magic Patterns, and just like how, like what do they do every day? Like what is their workflow, or I guess like their ritual or their routine?
Totally, yeah. We can talk about Freedom Mortgage, one of our customers. The UX team uses it at Freedom Mortgage, and so they take a user story, whatever it is, whether it's defined in Jira, their product management tool, and they'll put it into Magic Patterns to try and visualize, okay, how might this look? What's the next feature I need to build? What should we build? What should we not build? They'll prompt a couple of times. When they're done with it, they might ask stakeholders for feedback, ask them to comment, just like in Figma. And the beauty of Magic Patterns is because it's all code first, it's interactive, right? So for the first time ever, these designers can actually see the whole flow in minutes versus, it's these static layouts side by side, right? And collaborate directly with PMs that use it too.
So do they need to start, call it the onboarding or the setup process in Magic Patterns by bringing in their design system and like a lot of the various, call it assets or themes or colors and component libraries and stuff that allow them to kind of do what you just described? Is that like a heavy onboarding process for a lot of those teams, or do you find that that's getting like, that's really like they're happy to not have all their stuff to get started?
Yeah. So, for context, in Magic Patterns, we have this idea of a preset, which is basically like a cursor rules or default prompt, right? And so in the case of Freedom Mortgage, there is the Freedom Mortgage preset, which has all of their colors, their design tokens, and then also we have a component library, which to the whole point about like why if only front end, it allows us to focus on features like this, right? Like components, and your styles are a first-class citizen. And so it depends, like in their case, I don't remember it being too difficult. Of course, we do have support tickets all the time that are like, yo, this is way too hard. How do I bulk import components, and it's things that we're obviously are top of mind and we're working on. And then what's interesting, of course, we have lots of PMs who use it without the preset. They just like want a wireframe, or they don't care that much that it looks like their existing style. So it really varies, but it's definitely something we're always trying to get faster and better.
So that's kind of like the use case, like the PM use case that doesn't care about everything being like, high fidelity. On point for them might be, I have a user story, or I have an idea for how to improve this page, or like how to add something to this page. So maybe I'll just take a screenshot of that page, drop it into Magic Patterns, have Magic Patterns recreate that page, and then work with Magic Patterns to almost like ideate to come up with a solution or come up with a concept for how to do that. But the whole thing is basically throwaway work from the beginning. They're not imagining that the happy path for this exploration will be that it becomes production code at any point.
Well, it depends. I mean, we do have lots of teams that end up using our MCP or copying the code into Cursor, and like it makes it into production, right? But there is also just that use case of, as you're noting, wireframing. Like really interesting. There was a video that was released recently, totally a surprise to me. I know they were using us, but the video was a surprise, which is Ramp, the fintech company. There's a designer there named George. He was showing how he uses Magic Patterns. And I remember when I first met George at Ramp, I'm like, George, we have all these features, the library, the preset, all these styles, like we can ingest that. What makes us different? And he kind of just uses a very lightweight version just for kind of wireframing. And so that's very interesting to me, and like something we're always trying to stay attuned to, which is, yes, we have all these features that let you generate in your existing styles, but power users sometimes also like just use a very lightweight version.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about founders like you who are in this space, you're kind of like forced a little bit to like live in the future and kind of like thinking of like, hey, here's what I think actually like the teams of the future will look like. Here's what the happy path will look like. So I'm curious, like, but I'm sure you also talk to some companies that, Ramp is not a small company, and I'm sure you probably have been bigger companies that are not even as innovative and as Ramp. So I'm curious, like, maybe like what do you think is maybe like, what is the difference between like someone like probably like Magic Patterns are using like the product like to the max, probably like trying to follow that happy path, to maybe someone who is more in the middle, and like, how does, and just like the differences that you see in terms of like how they operate and how they use the product?
My biggest learning over the last like 2 years of seeing what makes a user successful, prompt engineering is not a joke. Prompt engineering is real. Knowing how to prompt is worth it. Kind of understanding how these tools work under the hood is worth it. We spend a lot of time on our documentation, and I actually offer like best practices sessions and things like that because I'm so motivated to make sure that people know that at the end of the day, the most important thing you can do to become a power user and get the most value is learning how to prompt. So that's definitely the biggest thing.
So basically, the better someone is at prompting, the more the better they retain, or the more they engage, like the more value they get out of the product. Is that like the implication? And
yeah,
the more someone thinks they can just like make this thing prettier, or like
right.
something like the more people see that kind of stuff and are not satisfied, the more they churn.
Well, yeah, like here's why I'm so thankful to Lovable and V0 and everything. We were around before Lovable, right? And in the earliest days, we would have lots of problems with users just like not knowing how to use the tool. Like it's funny, some of the earliest feedback was the way our loading worked and people not noticing where the chat bar was, and like basic, what we thought at the time was like basic like UX things, I guess because we were living in the future, right? Then all of these tools explode, and more people know how to use ChatGPT. Everyone's using ChatGPT. Everyone's interacting with a chatbot in some capacity. And suddenly, like that no longer became a problem. Like that was no longer feedback that we got. And so now I think we're kind of at like stage 2, which is, okay, everyone knows like the basic UX of how to use like a chatbot, but like what are the prompting strategies that are really effective to take you to that power user status?
Can we get into that a little bit? Because I actually, just from a selfish perspective, I want to know how much of a noob I am. And yeah, probably like I'll also learn a couple of things. So
how much value am I leaving on the table right now by not being good at this? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure what's the best way to go about it, but like maybe, I don't know if you have like, I think usually when I see someone just,
is it like what makes for great prompting, or like what are the attributes of the people that are the best at this? Is that kind of what you're thinking about, Marc?
Yeah. Or just like, I feel like I learn a lot from just like watching someone do something like, and like then kind of like trying to, as you were saying, deconstruct why, hey, you use this sentence or you're adding the specifications, or like just kind of like seeing what they prioritize in that prompt. I think, and just being able to ask questions, that to me feels like a good, like how I learn. And
Totally. Yeah, I can screen share for sure. We can like do an example one.
And when you think about prompting, like as we get into the screen share, in my mind, there's kind of like two high level ways to, well, I guess three. Like one is we could look at an actual project that you've been using and we could see how you how you basically come back to magic patterns to iterate on something. We could also look at like 0 to 1. Here's just an idea and a prompt. And then we could also look at the third category, which might be like, here's a screenshot of something I want to iterate on, and starting from that point. Like, so where are we starting from? An existing project that you have?
Yeah, so I thought it'd be fun. We could start at, let's pretend I work at LinkedIn, right? Just as kind of a demo example. And so in Magic Patterns, another thing that's kind of unique to us is we have this concept of templates, where because I'm in this demo LinkedIn workspace, we have like a settings page that we, can already iterate on. Thanks to like our existing components and everything that we've set up, this is built with my LinkedIn design preset here. We like have this example template that we can just go ahead and start prompting with.
And what do you call this
Nice.
thing we're looking at right now? Are we viewing a prototype? What are we viewing?
that name has changed so much over the last 2 years. We internally and externally call it a design, right? We think prototype, you bring it to production, is it really truly a prototype? So we call it a design. And there's really a couple concepts here. There's the designs. We do have a canvas. It's a lot like Figma, this canvas right here. And then we have libraries where there's a series of components that, we ingest. So like in the case of LinkedIn, we have this LinkedIn library where, now in any of my designs, I can use like this, what is called entity or profile picture component.
Got it. So let me just put this into a sentence. When you are working on a design, that design can exist within a canvas, or is there no relationship between the canvas and the design?
Oh yeah, the canvas is just a way to organize your designs, a lot like Figma. So if I go into here, you'll see like now there's a bunch of LinkedIn screens here just as a sample demo on my canvas here, right? Where each one of these, if I actually click into this, I right click, you'll see each one of these is that chat interface that we know and love with all of the code. And so that's another thing that actually makes us different, is not many other tools have this, where we can kind of compare side by side, leave comments, and organize our designs.
Got it. And then the way that each of these, I guess, like designs of that canvas connect with one another, I think of back in the day, like sketch prototypes, obviously Figma, like hotspots, like those kind of things. Like, what would you call the connective fabric between like each of these screens on the canvas to each other?
Interestingly, like each one of these can be many, many screens, right? That's what's kind of, I think, a unique change in design tooling, is that in the old world, the old world being like 2 years ago, right? In the old world, when you were looking at a canvas, it was always static. It was a vector. In the case of Figma, it's like a fancy Figma node, right? And but it's static, versus each one of these is actually like a mini website under the hood, with interactivity and with multiple pages, if we were to prompt it that way. So the connective tissue is really just the user choosing, hey, are these related? Like in this case, I'm looking at all my various kind of dashboards as if I worked at LinkedIn, right? But I could make another folder to organize them that way.
Got
yeah,
it. So is there a one-to-one mapping between those chat? Because I think that chat menu on the left. So what's the mapping between a chat and one of these like dynamic websites that I'm seeing on the canvas? Is it one-to-one mapping?
It's one-to-one, right? Where a
Okay,
chat
got
is,
it.
the ability to make interactions through prompting.
so it's almost
Got
like
it.
the way I think about a canvas is like a collection of designs. And then you decide how you map that collection, right? Could be like an iteration of the same, like could be like 20 iterations of the same screen. And you're just like saying, hey, which one do you like better? Or it could be like the collection of our, like all our like dashboard designs. So it's like, it's almost kind of like free for all of like how you use it basically, right?
And a design maps to a chat, And then so a canvas contains designs, and then each of the designs has the full chat history, I guess, like available that led to the current version of it.
That's right. So in each one of these, right, I'm just right clicking on here, open an editor, and I can say, add a search bar so I can use natural language to, query for my settings. And I'm firing that off. I could go back to my canvas, and while this one is loading, I could open up another one and make a change in here, right? So kind of like parallel AI agents going on right now on this canvas.
Interesting.
By the way, how would you rate that prompt that you just did?
Yes, where we got into all of this before the screen share. How would I rate that prompt? I would rate it okay. it's all right.
Solid B.
Yeah.
What would make it A+?
So a couple of things, right? The biggest thing that I always recommend is specificity. And it's why we actually, if you go to our docs and you look at prompting tips, the number one thing is specificity. And that's where I see people really go, like it goes awry, right? So in this case, if I know I want a search bar, maybe it's just related to like profile information, or I know I want it above profile information. What I can do, classic curse of the demo. This is proving it's a live podcast right here.
Proof of life. Proof of life.
This is proof. Yes, exactly. Luckily, try and fix with AI does not cost a credit. Thankfully, I know a person that works there, so we have unlimited credits. But yeah, anyway. So go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was gonna say, if you want, like, we could also screen share something, because I was actually trying to rebuild our Insider Loops website, Magic Patterns, earlier this morning. And I don't know if that could be fun, because I was trying to figure out why where is it? Magic Patterns. Here we go. Why did I lose my tab? God, I hate all these tabs. Okay, so where are we? Let me screen share.
Although I'm not sure if we should allow this, because are we in the hobbyist ICP?
No, I think it's fine.
Okay, I think this is it. Okay, so let me expand. Do we see this okay, Mark?
Yep.
Okay. We have our Insider Loops website, vibe coded by yours truly, mostly in Cursor. And I know I hate it like most people hate their own products. I always think it could be better. Okay. So I want to make it stronger. And so I came in here, and my very first one is I just dropped like a screenshot of the website. I used this tool called full page, go full page, to take like a full page screenshot of the app. So I kind of gave it this image that had everything in it. And then I was like, redesign this to feel premium and elegant, actually, you know what? I didn't even come up with this prompt. I used your button in Magic Patterns that's like, redesign this, and it generated the prompt. So this isn't my prompt. This is the prompt that's like, I guess, your out of the box prompt. And then it kind of came up with a version. For some reason, it thought we're all about compensation guidance. So I was like, I don't know why that's happening. But then, I kind of like asked to take another stab, and then it landed at this current version. And so what I noticed is like, it just made up these companies. Like we don't have guides for Salesforce or Lyft. Like, I don't know why it came up with those. So what's going on? Why is that happening? And then like, how is it just as simple as like update the companies that this is using for? Like, what would you say is a good prompting kind of next step in this case?
Yeah, the short answer is, if you're like, oh my God, what's going on with these companies, is we can just have a prompt that updates them. What I think is more kind of interesting is you're asking, why did it do that? Like, why did it show me these companies? I'm very curious. If you go to your screenshot, does it mention Uber, Stripe, Salesforce, or Lyft anywhere?
Yeah, so it says Stripe, Figma, Uber, DoorDash at the top. And then it also says those here. So we've got like a card. We've got Uber, Stripe, DoorDash, Figma.
So it basically, the Uber and Stripe is correct, but it hallucinated DoorDash and Figma, and it did Salesforce, etc.
Yeah. So I was trying to figure out like where that came from. So is it like, in this case, would you just like ask it, like, why are you talking about Salesforce and Lyft? And like it might tell you?
Yeah, so actually we have like a backslash. If you do the forward slash, I always mix them up. Forward slash, and then you do discuss. You can talk to it and say, hey, why did you do Salesforce and Lyft?
Because they're not like fully off, right? Like, they're tech companies that hire PMs,
Yeah.
And
And what's funny is these AI large language models, they tend to be very agreeable, right? Oh, yeah, it's classic. You're absolutely right. Why did I make an assumption? And why did it make an assumption? Yeah, I mean, you can kind of think of it like hallucinated the output where maybe it saw Uber and Stripe, and then it's not really paying attention to what the next one should be. It's just probabilistically guessing like the next token in the sequence, right? Which is like, oh, probably the next PM guy to Salesforce and Lyft, right? But you're doing it excellently here, where you're just kind of following up to correct them. Yeah, and then you want to say something like, yeah, please go ahead and make the update. What you could do then, kind of just calling it out, is if you see right under in that prompt box there, there's this box with the cursor when you're done typing.
Yep. So I gotta
Um,
move this thing. Okay, here we go.
So you can use that to turn on what we call select mode, which is very powerful across all of these tools, whether you're using magic patterns or not. But you can actually use shift to like select the parent sections if you just escape out for a second. But you're getting the idea, right? Where we can use select mode to kind of tell the AI, hey, this is what I'm talking about. In your case, you're probably okay because you want to mention the entire web page. You're saying on the site anywhere, like you can go ahead and just fire that off. But I think
So
it's
it'll automatically shift from discuss back into, I guess, like, what would you call this mode? That would be
that's funny. We don't have a name. The normal mode,
the normal mode,
agent mode. Yeah.
build mode. I guess
Yeah.
Cursor has
Yeah.
like ask, plan, agent. I guess like normal mode is agent mode.
Yeah, and we've actually baked in a bit of planning. You'll see kind of that's why the first thing that you see up there is plan for
yeah.
seconds, which is so interesting because in the earliest days of the company, like that was not an option. It would take too long. It was not effective. And so it's really cool seeing how the technology has evolved where planning is almost like a requirement now, right? Like it's how you get the best output, like, and it's fast enough. So cool.
Do you think I or anyone should care about which model is running right now?
So in our case, we're always trying to use the best models. Like we're using Opus 4.5, Sonnet 4.5, and Gemini 3. And actually, we are choosing under the hood which model to use, like given what task is happening. Is why we have this auto. Do I believe people should care about what models? It's tricky because I think, as an example, if I'm in Cursor and I have this really important task and I know I want to use like the best model like Opus 4.5, right? And they're secretly giving me like GPT-4 or something, yeah, I would be upset. So like I think I should care, but I also do have kind of faith in the tools that if you're a paying user, like, right, it's our goal to give you the best thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like hallucinating some reviews that we don't have, but I like how ambitious it's being.
Right. Well,
And
that's its goal of trying to give you something that's very fleshed out, and give you like give you more content than not, right? So if you don't want those quotes, like you can just tell it, hey, delete those quotes.
And a question I have too is like when would you recommend, like, for example, when are you using this interface versus like the MCP via Cursor or Cloud Code? Like what is the different kind of use cases there? Do you use this first to like do all the foundational work, and when you like are really focused on front end versus when you have to fix something quickly, you go into Cloud Code and be like, hey, like fix this. Like how do you think about those two kind of ways of using the product?
Totally. So we use it internally, of course. Dog fooding, super important. I believe so deeply in that. I'm actually pretty convinced that if you don't dog food, like something is deeply wrong at your company. It's also just
And
more fun.
yeah, maybe kind of take a little tangent there. Like how do you like, I know like different features have like different risks on like how like the variance and like depending on how deterministic the output is. Like how do you know, hey, like as a founder, like, hey, like we've done enough dog fooding and I feel comfortable releasing it to some customers? Like do you have like a high level, I don't know, like framework that you use or there to kind of decide that?
Oh, that's interesting. So we don't when we dog food, it's generally not to like test a feature. Like if we want to test a feature, we'll just roll it out behind a feature flag and ask our power users to use it. Instead, we dog food just like the traditional classic use cases, right? And so I use it very much the way most other founders use it, which is I'm visually communicating an idea to the team. I'm asking the team, is this what we think is good? Or I'm experimenting and brainstorming myself of, hey, here's this UI that I want to add. What are the possible options? The other day, I was doing like a UI for our domain capture. And I'm like, okay, should it be rounded pills or not? And I'm experimenting in magic patterns. Then what we'll do is use our export options where I will actually click export in the top right, copy code as prompt, and feed that into Cursor and tell Cursor, hey, here's my code for magic patterns. Actually integrate it into my code base.
Nice. Do you ever export it into Figma or anything like that? Is that like a use case that you like force your team to dog food, given that like it probably happens sometimes, or like for some of like those like more like enterprise customers? Like,
so actually, no, we don't force. I don't believe in that. Like, I don't believe in forcing usage. Like, you'll never truly understand, right? Like, candidly, we don't use Figma for product designs and software designs. We use magic patterns. So we don't actually like force the usage of export to Figma. We also get enough support tickets and user stories where we have a pretty good understanding of where does it fall short.
If you're enjoying this conversation, please check out the links in the show notes to support the podcast. Marc and I do this out of love, but to keep it going, we also need your support. Thanks, and now back to the episode.
What I like for dogfooding specifically is it really gets new teammates in the mind of a user, right? Where like you feel the frustrations yourself. It's so different, hearing a user say, maybe as Ben's about to say right now, like, I'm struggling with prompting, right? That's so different than like you doing it yourself and thinking like, why isn't this working? Oh, shoot, I'm not using select mode or whatever it is.
and how like right now for your team, like how
Sorry,
many?
I'm just here, just doing my best to get what I want. But I think it's kind of like I might give up at some point and ask you what the A+ prompter would do to kind of get what they're trying to get at. But you could see I'm basically like on my third attempt to try to get this YouTube thumbnail to occupy the horizontal. Like I basically want it. So if you see on Insider Loops, like on our actual website, you see how I have this kind of nice horizontal thumbnail of the YouTube video. That's doesn't feel like there's anything protruding, no dead space. Maybe, it's just like a nice video on top of a white background. And I'm trying to get the same to happen here. And so this is a point where I'm like, man, like, am I messing up? Like, do I need to, am I almost like playing within certain rules that I'm not even aware of, that I have to almost tell it specifically like, hey, like go back and regenerate something because incremental prompting won't get me what I want?
Your intuition is spot on in this sense. Here's the worst thing you could do right now is you could prompt not working, enter, not working, enter, please fix, enter. We're going to lose the context and it's going to, sometimes I call it like corrupted, right? Like the corrupted context window, dirty context window, sometimes is what people call it, right? So in this case, here's what I would attempt. Let's use select mode to like make sure we tell the AI very specifically what we're talking about. So go ahead
I want to
and
collect the container, like the div, or do I want to? Okay.
The container in this instance, yeah. Go ahead and hit add to chat. Then also we're going to do a command. So do /debug. And here's why your intuition was so good. Debug under the hood is like, hey, AI, whatever you're doing is not working. Please revisit what I have been telling you because it's not working. You don't actually have to type that. Like it's
okay.
That's what debug is prompting under the hood for you, right? I think a lot of our job as the AI application, the GPT wrapper, which is no longer a negative thing. The GPT wrapper, right, it's our job to like prompt for you, right? Like we want to minimize the cognitive load. So debug.
But what I do see here is like it says describe the problem you're experiencing. So that's the human language input from the user that you want me to provide.
Yes. So something along the lines of
here. I can take a stab. Why don't you grade me? Let me see how good my intuition is. Okay. So critique me, and I'm going to use a voice dictation for a second just so it's faster. I'm trying to get the YouTube thumbnail to occupy the entire horizontal rectangular container so that when someone looks at the website, they don't see a mobile version of the thumbnail that's all cut off, but instead see the full thumbnail in its entire beautiful layout. Something like that.
Yes. Yeah, I would rate it like a B plus.
Cool. What? Critique me. This is obviously like I want people to. I want to learn, and then I want other people to learn too. So like, what's the critique here?
Well, here at the end of the day, if it works, then it's it passes the check, right? The vibe check. No pun intended. But where I see power users really succeed, and something I've learned from users is just like the more context, the better. And also, if we can, like a little technical explanation, if we're familiar, technical explanation of like what's going on. So in this instance, yeah, like I'm trying to get the YouTube thumbnail, see a mobile. Like I instead might say like make the YouTube thumbnail occupy the whole container and be like max width. Right now,
Occupy the whole container and be max width. Okay.
And then like here's another thing that I think is important to learn is these agents, like they're not very good at visualizing, right? Because all it really sees is code under the hood. We could feed it a screenshot, and I don't think that works like that well, because when it sees a screenshot, it kind of overly tries to recreate it versus using it as input. But so remember, it's just seeing code right now, right? So there's a chance that it doesn't actually know that it's like constrained vertically if it's like looking at the wrong code. So you can also tell it like it is currently incorrect in that it is only horizontal and cut off. It should not be cut off, something like that.
I'm botching this, but let's just see what it does with it.
The moment of truth. And now, of course, even after my prompting, we'll see. There's still an element of randomness, right?
Okay, so the first thing it's doing is it's planning. So it's kind of trying to figure out the technical problem restatement, which looks like it got right.
And that's all the result of the debug command, right? I'm glad you were reading that. That's another thing that I recommend to users is, hey, no matter what tool you're using, read the AI output, right? Like this might be a really good clue if it didn't work on this one, like what is happening. Yeah, sad. Okay, now we're getting into true power user mode right here. So
let's go.
I'm curious.
So, okay, what if I just did this and I'm like, I want the video to show up exactly like it does on this screenshot, but on the site that you're helping me build. Okay, man, ran into the paywall.
All right. Give me 1 second.
Got pretty far though.
And we can do it.
Sorry, I feel terrible on air showing that I'm not paying you for your product.
We can redo it. You're good. Hold on. I'm going to give you some credits right now.
Okay, let me.
That was
okay. Go ahead and
insanely fast.
Go ahead and hit just copy that and go ahead and hit enter again. But you're going to have to attach the image. So yeah, we can try like feeding it the screenshot as well. Yeah, go ahead and hit
my current site in the context of its section. No, just adding that.
If this doesn't work, then what we would get into is like taking a quick peek at the code if we're familiar, right? Because that also have like a huge hint. And that's why I tell users all the time, they're like, do I still need to learn like how to code? I take the controversial opinion of yes, it is helpful, like knowing under the hood, like what is happening here, because it can help us be a better prompter, right? If we can like diagnose something that the AI agent can't.
Oh, see, now it's saying it wants to add company logo section above the video, which is actually not something I needed to do because it already did it. So it's almost like taking the additional context that was in that screenshot, which included these logos, and it's kind of assuming I also want that part.
Yeah,
or at least that's what it came up with in the plan.
It'll be interesting to see. Like sometimes it does surprise me where it's smart enough where it knows, oh shoot, I actually already see the logos. I don't need that. But yeah, that is an example, right? Where like if you upload a screenshot,
boom,
boom.
Yeah, nice.
Okay,
nice.
So now we got that. I don't need the logos above the YouTube video because we already have them in the hero. And I also think that the thumbnail is too large, so I would like to make it 50% smaller on the page.
Okay, any feedback on that prompt?
So you could actually like turn on select mode and then just delete it directly. It's like we try our best to like not to have you have to prompt when you don't need to.
So you do believe that there's room in this world for like the click in action or click in something kind of CMS historical kind of like style interaction?
I do, yeah. I think this is going horribly awry because like we need to select that. Yeah. I do. Like at the end of the day, we want to just get people to create their output as fast as possible. And so like that's a prime example. We prompted for it and it didn't do it, but then we clicked it and it removed it.
And
There's
so
just like
for this,
go
is
ahead.
there like do you also believe, like, should I be able to resize this, like drag and click and drag kind of here?
That's where it's tricky, and there is a whole kind of set of companies that are trying to do that, right? Which is like, how can I kind of resize but also prompt? It's very technically challenging because it's very hard to like have raw code at the end of the day that can be merged into production or used in production, but also allow for like resizing on the fly in my platform. It's one of the reasons why in this space, Figma to code, I think, is like largely an unsolved problem. It's something that every design tool founder about 3 years ago was working on. Like if you were starting a design tooling company and you asked people, what's my hair on fire problem 3 years ago, they'd say Figma to code, right? And it's just like unsolved. And it's fascinating to me that ultimately it was solved by like not even doing Figma code, but just going to code directly with these kind of large language models.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I don't know if
maybe,
you saw this, but like I was the first PM at Abstract, and before Figma, kind of killed Sketch, or at least like got Sketch on the defensive. And we were building a lot of, like, we basically had a whole like eng handoff kind of mode. And I agree with you. It's like the way we were thinking about going from design to production code back then. It seems like no one thought this was how it's going to go. So it's
Yeah.
really. Marc, what were you going to say?
yeah. I mean,
Bring us
I think
back
what's
on
really
track.
interesting. Yeah. I think what's interesting about this product in general is that I think like kind of marries the best of both worlds. It's like a hybrid of like, you can select and edit stuff, but then also you can also prompt it on the chat. So I'm curious, how do you think when you're onboarding like new users, like how do you bake that into the education of like, hey, like you can do this, and like and also like, I think it's important for you to like have an opinion, right? Of like, hey, like this is a lot faster if you just delete it and like you just select it and delete it. So like from like a product lenses perspective, like how do you think about that challenge, and what have you learned from getting people to adopt the tool?
Yeah, well, I do believe that if user education is necessary, defined as, reading the docs or something like that, it's not intuitive enough. Like there's a UI, UX change that can be made, right? So that's not something we're always thinking about, like having tips in the loading screen, right? We call like the entry points, right? Or how visible is something? How obvious is something? It's challenging, especially because this is a new space, right? Like, and we're still so early. It is so easy to be wrapped up in like Silicon Valley startup, culture of, oh, like everybody's this, this is the end. No one's writing code by hand anymore. No one's doing this anymore. One really cool thing about working on Magic Patterns is just like the number of companies that I still talk to every day, and they go, hey, we don't know, we don't use like any of these AI tools. Like I kind of know what ChatGPT is. How are people using this? It's like so easy to be in the bubble. And so to that point, I think that, yeah, we're like always still learning and want to make things simpler.
I was at I guess like a lunch, maybe dinner the other day, and I was talking to a couple of friends who are not, like techies. They're not product people, they're not engineers, not designers, but vibe code. I brought up vibe coding, and they're like, "What's that?" And I was like, "Oh man, these are like people living in New York. That one of them actually works at a tech company, just not in a tech function." Um, and I was like, it was just a reminder to me. I had this kind of like light bulb moment. That's like, I'm so in this small little echo chamber of people drinking the Kool-Aid and talking about the Kool-Aid. And obviously like we use it, like, Marc and I have used AI tremendously for a lot of what we're actually working on. But it was just a reminder to me of how early we are in the overall adoption curve of this technology into mainstream America. And the idea that like some random person in Texas who doesn't work in tech is going to be vibe coding something. It's kind of like, I was like, man, like, are they using this stuff? Like, are most of those people going to find vibe coding as like a replacement for like a Squarespace or like Wix or like a website builder? Is that how they're all going to kind of get exposed to it versus all this like stuff that we're talking about? I don't know if I'm going anywhere with that, but I just plus wanting your point about how early we are, I think.
Yeah.
Definitely, and it's always disappointing to see people like gatekeeping it, right? And thinking like, well, if you're not training your prompts with ChatGPT and the magic patterns using the MCP and aren't familiar with RAG, then like you are just behind the times. Like, so not true. Um, and the tools are only getting easier and easier to use, which I think is so magical, right? Like we've just observed in this space, as I was saying earlier, how before, you couldn't submit a big prompt because the context window would overflow. Now that's actually an advantage. More context, the better, right? Um, and so it's so exciting, like seeing what people build, and just like people do sometimes still tell us this is magic, and I'm like, wow, like I haven't felt that in 2 years, working with all these AI tools every single day. So
Do you feel just, I guess the question is, how does it make you feel to know that we're so early and therefore a lot of the people that explore your product as well as your competitors' products will have a unsatisfying maybe experience perhaps, like, but that if the trend continues, that the models will keep getting better, the more people will get exposed to these, people will get better at prompting, that it's going to get much better. But how does it feel to be in this like early stage for you building one of these products?
well, again, like something that's in our DNA again is when we first launched in started writing code for this in August of 2023, launched in October 2023. The only models at the time were GPT-3.5 and like GPT-4 had just come out. And they sucked. It was bad. Like we have early screenshots where you would type like a form and then it would give you like, what's your birthday? Like name and birthday calendar. And you're thinking like, I didn't ask anything about my birthday. I just wanted a form. Right. And I think when you like see that and you question like, is anyone ever going to get value from this? Well, if the models get better, like they will. And now we're at today where there's kind of no question, do people get value from this stuff? It's pretty amazing in that, like, let's say even the models don't get better, this stuff is here to stay, like 100,000%. Versus when living in a time 2 years ago where there was this big bet, like if the models get better. So that's like kind of a cool feeling. Like we don't have to worry about if the models get better. If they do, everyone's value is going to go up. We're going to be a better product. People are going to develop faster, but it's okay
Yeah.
if they don't too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like you're building this foundation that in theory it's only going to get better as all these labs release better models, which is a good place to be in.
Well, I feel like
I'm curious.
LLMs and like these models, it's almost like this technology has just been dropped. It's like we just like leapfrogged some kind of what's possible, and we're all now making sense of it. And what I'm hearing you say, Alex, let me know if I'm hearing you right, because I think it's generally how I think that made sense to me at least, which is like, even if we stop innovating on the models right now and we just lock in the current state of the models, we've probably got like, I don't know, 5-10 years of innovation just based on what we already have. But what's going to happen is the models will keep getting better. It's almost like there's an infinite amount of innovation that's just going. I don't know. It's like this compounding exponential amount of innovation that just becomes possible every day. Yeah, but Mark, what were you gonna say? Alex, feel free to react to what I just said, by the way.
I was just going to say, like, that's spot on, right? Where I think, like, for a long time, all the founders in this space were like, oh my God, if the models don't get better, I am so screwed. And now that's like not the case. Like, if they get better, good. If they don't get better, that's okay too. Like, there's value being created in profitable businesses and fast growing businesses. And 99% of people that can use magic patterns have never heard of magic patterns before. Like, that's the challenge in front of us, right?
Yeah, I think Ben, what you're getting at is that there might actually be more leverage in spending more time understanding these workflows and how these design workflows are changing and how design work is changing, and like really spending more time with customers and then making the UI simpler and easier to use rather than obsessing over, hey, like how do we, readapt this new product for these new, now that we have these model capabilities. So at the end of the day, like if everyone has like the same models, the differentiator is your understanding of a specific workflow or a user, and kind of like how creative and how much good judgment do you have to build the best product possible, which is super interesting. And maybe to take things like a different direction, I'm making an assumption here, so correct me if this doesn't happen, but for those companies that are like maybe like waking up to this movement right now, like I'm sure they probably see like, you do an amazing demo and they're like, holy shit, like this is incredible. But I'm sure like the next kind of reaction is like confusion of like, hey, do we need designers anymore? Like, do we like what are like are PMs going to use this? Like, how do they use this? So like, when they ask those questions, right? Like, what is your mental model right now for like to almost kind of meet people where they're at? But yeah, like, how do you think about just like what are the boundaries of those two roles?
That's funny. That's kind of you. Let's be clear. Not every demo ends with, holy shit, how am I going to use this? Sometimes they're like, oh, I thought it would be better. I was told it could one shot my entire product perfectly, pixel perfect, that's, so how do they use it? Usually it's actually like bringing them down to understanding, hey, it's not pixel perfect with your product. Why is it not pixel perfect? Okay, well, let's set up the design tokens in the library. And what are you working on today? Show me an example screenshot. And what we try to really drive home is visually communicating, where it's really cool, like how much product market fit we have with product managers, which is something we kind of fell into, by the way. My co-founder and I being front-end engineers, when we first released the product, we thought front-end engineers are going to use this. They're going to use the code, and we're making a front-end assistant, right? And then over time, we would embed ourselves with these software teams, and the engineers were not using it. They were using Cursor, but instead the PMs were using it to visually communicate for the first time, to take a user story, paste it in, and get a visual mock-up to talk about and go through the interactions and the error states and et cetera. So that's been really, really exciting is PMs using it, but then also designers using it to like ingest the components, set up these presets. So the whole thing is standardized. The tool consistently outputs styles that look like the product.
So it almost sounds like the designers are like the guardians of the system in a
Yes.
way, and that's like how they get like leverage by like making sure, hey, like we have all the right like rules in place, and then so if you have a crazy PM that goes in and starts putting a lot of user stories that are actually like you wouldn't be ashamed of the output that Magic Patterns comes out with, basically.
What would you say is like, are there any comment? You mentioned the holy shit moment. I should use this. Not everyone obviously gets there in their first session or their first attempt, but what have you learned about getting people to that moment? We talked about prompting, right? We talked about obviously the better they are at prompting, the more likely they are to get that. But is there anything else that stands out for like what you've learned about getting people to that aha moment with one of these products?
Yeah, I think it depends on their existing workflow, right? It's kind of like the classic, who is your ICP? Like one thing we have learned, if you are a pro in Figma and you can make anything in Figma in 20 minutes, this tool is like probably not for you. You might be impressed by, okay, in 30 seconds, I can get an interaction or whatever, right? But like, I'm not going to kid you, like the level of fidelity that you can create in Figma dragging and dropping and pixel perfect is like, isn't there, right? So that's one thing I've learned is, it's like classic product management user discovery, right? Of like what skill sets fit a tool like this versus not, As an example, I think people who have like a total aha moment are those that lived in Google Docs for a long time, or like they would create massive Slack threads on like exactly how the feature should look and using like Google Docs plus Google Slides to like annotate a screenshot to explain to engineering how it would work. Those people are like, holy shit, like this is game changing. I had a user tell me once that previously they would do 15 calls with customers, like back and forth to decide on like the feature or like the implementation. And Magic Patterns brought it down to 2 because now they just display the prototype, get feedback, display the prototype again, all good, right? So yeah, it's more like, what is your previous workflow?
Got it. So people are they have some status quo in their head for like the way something works or the way you do something. And then they'll come to check you out because one of their friends talks about you or someone on their team mentions it. They'll come create an account, start kind of messing around. And what I'm hearing is like the ones that have the, oh my God moment are the ones that have like the token falls. And in their head, they're like, this thing that used to take me, to your point, 15 calls or 10 calls or 15 hours or 10 hours. Now they're seeing order of magnitude gain or opportunity of some kind. And that like, it's like they have to kind of get to that moment where something is fundamentally different in how they work. Or like they see the
Yeah,
potential for something to be very different.
Yeah, I think, well, they just immediately go, oh my God, I never have to do 15 calls with my customer again or write a big Google Doc again, right? Like I have this visual.
Mm.
Yeah. Another big challenge that I hear, like in the super community and just in general with the product community, is that a lot of times what happens is like a product leader or an executive will have like a come to Jesus moment of like, oh shit, I saw the matrix and I see like, I see what this could do for my company, for my organization, even personally as someone who maybe is like dabbling with building. But then I think they struggle a lot with the team adoption, or they think it's going to
Mm.
be easy. It's going to be easier than it is because they're like, hey, like if they can see what I saw, they're going to start using it again. But unfortunately, like I've heard a lot of people just getting frustrated with like that journey of like, hey, like execs is the light. How do you get everyone to follow it? So, what have you learned from like what works to get an entire org and to start leveraging these tools in a way that's cohesive and
Such a good question. So many people are thinking about this. Yeah, it's actually surprising to me how challenging this has been. So I'm curious to get your take, Alex.
Yeah, it's interesting. We recently broke a record where there is an org with 1,500 people in using
Amazing. Congrats.
patterns. Yeah. So,
And also, that must be very scary. But yeah.
well, actually, no, right? Like it's not like this is one of the cool things about being a founder is like it was way scarier when there were 0 users or like the first
fair.
enterprise ever. I remember our first customer ever, first enterprise, I should say, like ever, like when they signed up, they were based in Australia and like they had self-serve invited their like 8 users. And I'm like, looking at the database, like, is everything in a healthy state? That was way scarier than like 1,500. I mean, the biggest thing I've learned is like internal buy-in. Like I think I've kid myself over the years where I think I'm going to do an onboarding session and then they're all going to use it. It's like no matter how hard I try, I don't work there. Mo- Most people probably think I'm a salesperson no matter how many times I say it, right? Even if I say I'm customer support, they think I'm a salesperson. You naturally tune out salespeople. They think, why the heck is this calendar on my meeting, right? Like all the classic stuff that is not particular to the AI world, but just like how do we get people to use different tools internally? So I always try to get internal buy-in. I always try to have folks that have been using it, that have seen a lot of success, show the actual internal use cases, right? It hits so much harder when they're like, oh my God, Melissa from this team just showed how she used it. Oh my, that makes a lot of sense, right? And then also kind of going back to earlier, what we talked about is like not being afraid. Like so many people, I think they're like, oh God, well, I don't use ChatGPT and I don't know how to prompt, so I'm screwed. Like I'm not even, this isn't for me. Like it's over. It's like not true. We're here for you. That's been a big learning as well.
Got
I
it.
think it probably
Yeah.
boils down to a lot of like fundamental what motivates people,
Mhm.
literature, which is some combination of a carrot and a stick, right? The FOMO of becoming irrelevant or losing your job, or the fear of losing your job is part of it, but I don't think it's enough to motivate people truly. There also has to be a pull towards like, why is this good for me? Why am I excited about this? So yeah, I, I don't know if you guys have reactions to that, but I do think people have to feel kind of some sense of both to truly buy in and lean
Yeah.
in.
I think for what I've seen with product managers and product leaders is that they're very good at rationalizing what they should do or not do something. And it's a job where, like a founder, where there's always something that you could be doing because your backlog of tasks are endless. And I think a lot of times what I've seen is that people can always find a task that you can rationalize as higher priority than trying this new tool or trying to adopt
Right.
it or trying to learn it. So one of my learnings has been that so we've done a bunch of hackathons with our members for Supra. Like the most valuable outcome of those hackathons um, hasn't really been like, hey, like someone all of a sudden like build like a side hustle that's making like 10K of MRR. It's more on, hey, like you put this time in your calendar that kind of forced you to take the first step for like an hour and a half
Mhm.
to use this tool and kind of rip off the band-aid. And that kind of gave you the confidence to keep playing and be like, oh, cool. Like I'm actually not that behind. Like I thought all these people were ahead of me, but if in 1 hour and a half, I already feel comfortable. And, I'm actually like, it just kind of gets you motivated to keep going and staying ahead of the pack. So I think just like forcing people to use it somehow, I think is a big one there.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I also take very seriously, like, the user is never wrong to an extent, but the user is never wrong, right? Like, fundamentally, if people aren't using it, they're not seeing the value. It's something on us that, like, we largely can control. Like, I do believe that. But that's all to say, I think we're kidding ourselves if there isn't an element that's behavioral, how it's communicated internally, to your guys' points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah,
ahead, Mark.
the other one thing that I'll just say, like related to this topic that's been really helpful for me too is like I think sometimes setting the parameters like in multiple regards or like just being very opinionated, like be like, hey, here's a perfect use case for this, and here's like a use case where that's not gonna happen. So you almost kind of like reduce of like getting in like the debugging like hell that you're just like, hey, I'm trying to do this really difficult thing that actually like these tools are not that good at. So I think just like having some sort of guidelines has also been really helpful. And just like scoping things pretty small in the beginning, and then over time kind of like expanding those parameters.
Totally. Yeah. One of our core KPIs is like error rate on the first prompt, which does happen. Unfortunately, we can't control it all, and we're like, oh my God, because if the first experience is negative, it's like a first impression on a date or something, right? We always think very critically about that.
Yeah, that's such a good metric.
Yeah, I was gonna say, by the way, looking back at what we did during the demo, because I think we should start wrapping up. I think we've got a hard stop at the hour mark. Looking back at what I was able to get out of Magic Patterns today for the website, and what was it like? I got to the state I was at when we started this demo at probably like 15 minutes of tinkering and prompting. I gotta say, I was impressed because I think it kind of made me feel something more premium than what we have, which was kind of like part of the prompt. So I want to make sure we're doing justice to the things that worked well too, instead of just critiquing the parts that were a little harder. And then just putting on my PM hat for a second, I was going to say, if there's a way for tools like Magic Patterns to detect when someone it's almost like the rage click equivalent
Oh,
of,
yeah.
like on a website when there's like rage clicking and you're like, I want to watch the session that had rage clicking going on. It's almost like rage prompting. If I try to prompt repeatedly around the same thing and there's a way for the product to know that I'm prompting repeatedly about the same thing, maybe there's a way for it to gently suggest going into debugging mode versus me having to kind of discover that for myself. I think that could be an interesting idea.
I love that. It's like a frustration score or an anger score. I unfortunately have seen some very frustrated prompts, right? And it pains me so much because I hop on support, I hop on the Zoom call, and I'm like, hey, like, let's figure this out together. I don't blame people, but yeah, we need that. That's good. I love it.
Something tells me you've gained a lot more empathy for PMs as the founder of Magic Patterns than you had as an engineer.
Oh, totally. Totally. And that's again the reason why I love using our own tool is like I get frustrated at it too, right? So I think it's ridiculous to think, oh my God, why is this person prompting in this way? Spend 15 minutes with the tool, and like if you get frustrated, like you'll feel that too, right? And you think, okay, well, how can we combat that?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Cool. Okay. So I think as we kind of come into closing, Marc, I think we have our, two quick questions and we have gratitude corner. You guys down to start wrapping?
Let's
Do it.
Cool. So I'm happy to ask the two questions, and Marc, you can ask the gratitude corner question. But so Alex, as we think about people listening, our audience, we have two questions for you. The first one is, where can they go and learn more about what you're thinking about, what Magic Patterns is up to if they want to kind of go deeper? And then secondly, is there anything specific that our audience can do to be helpful to you?
Totally. Yeah. So Magic Patterns is free to try, right? www.magicpatterns.com. That domain name was $10, by the way.
Great
So
grab.
yeah,
Amazing.
Well
Great
done.
pickup.
don't ask me about the other domain names that we've bought in our life. But that one was a good one for $10. So magicpatterns.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I've really enjoyed like meeting other users and community members on LinkedIn. It's been like incredible for us. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And then of course we're on X. We have a free Slack community. Yeah.
Amazing. And what to be helpful, is it just to go try the product, give you feedback?
User feedback, especially if the usage is real. That's another thing I've learned, right? It's so easy to get what I call like fake user feedback. A classic one is move it to dark. Do you have dark mode? Or like, but if you actually use it, of course, all ears. I still take meetings with customers every single day. very likely if when you share your feedback, I might send you a calendar link and say, hey, do you want to hop on the phone? Because I love talking to users. So yes, definitely.
Amazing.
Great.
Yeah, strong +1 to real feedback. Like you can tell when someone actually has used the product, has felt the pain. I always tell people like, hey, like if you're interested in a startup, probably one of the best ways to get your feet in the door is like record yourself going through that pain point and that feedback and send it to the founder. Like any good founder will reply to that very positively, and something good will come out of it. I couldn't agree more. Awesome. Now our final question for you, Alex, is, man, you had an incredible journey to get to this point, building magic patterns and all the amazing work you did before. And so wanted to ask you, like, is there, one person or a couple of person that's come to mind that have played a key role in this journey that maybe you just want to thank them while we're on air?
Oh, sure. Totally. I mean, easily my co-founder, Teddy Nee. We started this podcast. You asked the question of, you guys only do front end, right? A lot of that is Teddy's resilience and not giving into the temptations of what's truly in our DNA, what we believe is best for the product quality, right? I mean, you can imagine I'm in meetings with investors or customers and they say, you should add a backend. And then I come back to Teddy. I'm like, Teddy, like, we got to add a backend. And he's like, no, I don't think so. And now over time, that has become more clear, but that's really the result of an amazing co-founding relationship, right? Where it's like you're bouncing ideas off of each other when there's external factors at play. So yeah, definitely Teddy. He's an amazing front-end engineer. So it's always been great working with your best friend.
That's awesome.
How'd you two meet?
We met in college. We met in college. Funny enough, we lived in a dorm called like North Park. And the C Corp, like the official name of the company, like in the state of Delaware, is North Park Labs, and that is named after the dorm room at Dartmouth.
Incredible.
Shout out Teddy.
Yeah. Shout out to Teddy. Also, the best man at my wedding. He gave a killer speech. He gave a wedding speech about being a work husband, which I don't think will ever become public, but it was an awesome speech. So
I reference to Ben like that. And people, some people get it. Some people look at me like,
My wife
weird.
knows. My wife knows Marc is the work husband.
Yeah. Shout out to work husbands everywhere.
And work wives,
And
like
work wives,
we don't discriminate.
Yeah. Spouses, work spouses.
Work spouses.
Amazing. This has been so much fun. Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, thanks for having
coming
me
on, Alex.
Yeah. Great to meet other members of the community and everything. And thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Amazing.
Cool.
This is a wrap.
That's a wrap.